The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Hurricane Sandy left a trail of devastation throughout the metro area. Compared to many other places, there's no doubt that the Bronx on the whole fared a little bit better. However, Sandy still created some havoc in our borough, and as we have done in the past, we thought we would present this special edition of BronxTalk to hear from elected officials, community leaders, and others to report on Hurricane Sandy in the Bronx. If you have questions or comments, you can call in also at 718-960-7241 or email them to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. I will be alone in the studio tonight, but we have a number of Bronx officials lined up to talk with us. We're going to go north, south, east, and west, all the different corners of our great borough of the Bronx. Up first is the council member from the 14th Councilmanic District, which involves Kingsbridge and parts of Bedford Park and Burnside Avenue. And so we'll say good evening to Councilmember Fernando Cabrera. Councilmember, how are you?
I'm doing great. I've been extremely busy dealing with all the issues related to the hurricane. I've been working throughout the city, coordinating efforts with different organizations, gone to many of the sites to see what's taking place. Mm-hmm. And it's horrific. And there are some things that we're doing well, and there's some things in the city that we're not doing so well right now that we're trying to fix.
Let's talk a little bit about your district. Let's start off there. Did you move about the district during the hurricane? Of course, it wasn't safe for anyone, but tell me what you've seen with your own eyes and what you hear from your constituents in that part of the Bronx. As I said, Kingsbridge, Burnside, and that section.
Yeah, my district did fairly well. I mean, we have some downed trees, but for the most part, most of us, 99% of our district has electricity. For a while, Fordham Hill had lost electricity, but immediately we contacted the mayor's office, the command center, and we were dealing directly with them, and we were able to get them up and going, so the electricity was restored there. But for the most part, we did fairly well, and I'll tell you why, because we're in the highest point in the entire city. This is why Living College is one of the shelters in Bronx Community College, because it is a place where it will not get flooded. But we did fairly well here, and I thank God for that.
How did Lehman do as an evacuation shelter? As I said, and there's no making a secret out of it. We don't have to make a tragedy when there is none. But we did reasonably well in the Bronx. Was Lehman busy? Was the Apex Center busy? Or was it not really, used
I
as
have
much?
to tell you, Gary, we have more workers there than people who are actually staying there. We've been flooded. We help. The parts of the city that are in desperate need is Far Rockaway. I went to visit. I went to help a council member of a fellow of mine. We brought some Bronx people to help Far Rockaway, to pump people's basement, to help. It's just the level of despair is something that goes beyond pictures and what we see on television. You almost have to be there. Imagine the Mississippi River going through your neighborhood. That's almost what they're going through. Is devastating, and same thing with the Lower East Side. Avenue C and D, they were flooded. They've been without electricity. Gary, this is what's really happening. People are running out of water. They're running out of food. We can't believe, I hate to put it this way, we can't believe the hype that we hear a lot of times. And Gary, through your show, I'm sharing something that a lot of people don't know, and I need people to hear out there, that people right now, they're in desperate need, so much of water that people are getting water from fire hydrants. Imagine that. They're getting water from fire hydrant because FEMA cut the supplies that we weren't supposed to get. And so we're not getting the levels of support that we were promised. And we're not getting the food that we were supposed to get throughout the city. And I'm very disappointed about that. And we even requested for staging places. I have churches ready to work. I have 80 truckloads ready to come into the city. Truckloads. The amount of food that I'm getting ready to bring into the city, and with these staging areas, and I'm waiting on administration to say, okay, yes, they put schools totally off limits for this weekend. We're requesting to have the staging areas,
Councilmember,
we were denied. I'm just shocked.
Let me ask you a couple of things.
I dealt with Haiti. I was there, as you remember. I worked with Katrina. I've been around. I wrote an article, general academic article. I'm a college professor on this very topic, and I have to tell you that we do a great job in rescue, but we don't do a great job in recovery.
Well, Councilman, let me ask you a couple of things about that.
Sure.
First of all, is it possible that FEMA and the other services are simply overwhelmed and can't get to everywhere that they need to get? That would be the first question. And then the second part, well, let's deal with that first one first, and then I want to address the second thing that you raised.
Well, that's a very fair question. This is a problem with FEMA, is that they don't coordinate with local organizations. They don't have the manpower. But second of all, they actually cut the supplies. They promised a certain amount of water and food that was supposed to get here today, and it just didn't come. And so, it's a broken promise.
Is there a contact? Well, I want to trace that. Is there a contact that you, as a city council member, whether it be going through leadership in the city council, Christine Quinn, or going through the mayor's office, that you can make direct contact with FEMA so you can communicate the need, or your colleagues can communicate the need, and then have it kind of work through that? Or does that infrastructure not exist? Because frankly, this is exactly what the president said would not happen after this difficult situation.
Yeah, the speaker has, and the council members have been advocating for the supplies to come in. The reality is that they're not disseminating the food and supplies. They could use the National Guard. So talk about lack of soldiers, so to speak. We have them. It's just the supplies. You got to have a quartermaster. The government's the quartermaster, and they're not putting forth the supplies. And therefore, Gary, imagine even in the Lower East Side, where I was there this morning, dealing with pastors and coordinating there. Imagine right. You're an 82-year-old.
I've never been proud as the borough president.
And you're on the 20th floor, no elevator, and you're running out of water. There is no heat. I think people need to remember that.
But so let me ask you this: was the city?
There's no electricity. You haven't got your medical supplies. The pharmacies are running out of supplies, and water and food is not getting to them
was the
way it should.
Was the city?
That's what is taking place. And yet, the Battery, Wall Street got electricity. They were somehow be able to get restored quickly, and yet, the people that were most devastated have not been able to be restored. So there's something wrong with that.
You're alleging, and frankly, you sent me a private message about this. You're concerned that there was actually inequity in who got served first and who did not. I mean, you're clearly stating that you think there was, whether deliberate or unconscious choice, but people who needed it most didn't get services right away.
There was and there is. Look at Con Edison. They're giving dry ice. But let me tell you what they put in the dry ice. In 14th Street and Union Square, I'm sorry, the people who are living there, they're pretty well off. the people in Alphabet City, where you have a lot of poor people, at best middle-class people, they only have one shelter, one point of connection, and there are hundreds of thousands of people around there. And as a matter of fact, in Avenue C and D and lower, there is no food supply, no water supply. It was just this afternoon that we were able to set up Pastor Richter Ria from Abounding Grace Church, who was able to set up a command center there, and we connected them with some nonprofits, outside nonprofits from other states, to be able to get busloads of supplies.
Okay, so let me ask you something based on something that you raised. And you said we're very good at rescue and when it first happens, but we're not good in the long run at dealing with the aftermath. You, as a council member, will have a dialogue, I'm sure, as we go forward into the future. What kinds of things do you propose that the city do to rectify this problem if, God forbid, a tragedy like this happens in the future?
You know, let me give you a perfect example. In Texas, when they had the last big hurricane, or Louisiana, when they had the last one after Katrina, what did the governors do there? What did the mayors did there? They organized around the nonprofits organization. They worked with the local churches. They worked with all those organizations that are already on the ground. They have the troops. They have the volunteer before the disaster takes place. So they amply supply. So once the catastrophic event takes place, we are able to. They were able to mobilize. To the point, I was talking to a gentleman who's been doing this for 40 years, Bob Pierce. And Bob Pierce was telling me by the time FEMA got there, the mayor of that town told him, we don't need you anymore because this was already taken through the infrastructure, through the nonprofit organizations, and through... but we don't do that here in New York. New York...
Councilman, I've got to bring some of your colleagues on. Is there any final words? Because you've made a very strong allegation here, and I'm guessing that there will be a lengthy dialogue in the council about these and other aftermath issues after this. So any last thing that you want to mention to us?
Let me close with this. I'm very proud of the council member in the Bronx. I'm very proud of the borough president, Ruben Diaz Jr., who was up in front from the beginning here in the Bronx. Things were taken care here in the Bronx because it was very on hands. Everybody mobilized, and so that's why you don't hear the level of distress that you hear in other areas. Even though we were struck, like in City Island, I was there too. I went to see what happened over there. So I'm very proud of what we did here. Great. We need to emulate that throughout the city. But thank you, Gary, for putting forth this show. It's so important that people know what's really happening out there.
Thank you very much. Let's bring on your colleague, the Bronx. It is Councilman Jimmy Vacca. Councilman Vacca, welcome to Bronx Talk Night.
Hi, Gary. How are you?
I'm just fine. Why don't you talk from a personal perspective, because you told me that you actually did not have power, and I think your story probably is similar to what many people in the 13th Councilmanic District had. So give me an idea about you and your family.
Well, my family was blacked out when the storm came, and we sat in darkness for several days. And then the night before last, people across the street from me got light, but I did not. Mm-hmm. And we spent another night in darkness, and finally today at around 12 noon, my home was restored.
Now, explain to me, were you well prepared? Did you feel like, well, you know, we kind of knew this might happen, or were you caught somewhat unawares? I mean, what did you give me the personal perspective on how you handled it.
Well, I do think we were prepared. We had several candles. We had 2 flashlights. We did have some food in the refrigerator that was fine to eat, even though we had no gas and we couldn't cook. So we did the best we could. We did have a radio with battery-operated radio, so we could hear what was going on. And then I brought my cell phones in to the office to be charged. I had to bring my electric shaver into the office yesterday and charge it there, too. So there were ways we improvised. I tell you one thing, it was inconvenient. But I do tell you that what happened in Queens and Staten Island and other places was much worse.
We certainly, I mean, there's no doubt about it.
I think we're fortunate that we are fine.
There's no doubt about it. Tell me about your district. Now, we just showed some pictures of Tony's Pier, and that's been widely publicized that it burnt down. City Island, the pier on City Island got some damage. Tell me, number one, about City Island, and number two, any other parts of your district that are of concern to you.
Well, Tony's Pier's fire was terrible. I was there with Borough President Diaz. We met with the owners. That fire totally leveled the restaurant. We visited several boatyards, Congressman Crowley and myself, on City Island. We saw the damage. We know what's happened. We know that there was flooding issues on City Island, too. We will come back, and we are going to rebuild that restaurant. We are going to take action regarding the flooding. And don't forget other areas in my district, such as Edgewater Park, Locust Point, Pennyfield Avenue, were very hard hit. And then we had serious blackouts throughout my district, and we're fighting Con Ed to get those issues resolved as soon as possible.
Okay, Councilman, explain to me when you say they were hard hit. What do you mean by hard hit?
Oh, well, the damage at Edgewater Park was extensive. We had people's homes seriously affected. We had water in beyond people's basements to their first floors. We had houses that got 5 to 6 feet of water. We had boats that landed in people's yards.
If you are a homeowner there, now Councilman Cabrera expressed some concern that FEMA wasn't doing what it had said and some frustration that he had over responses. Do you share that frustration, or do you think it's just a matter of process?
Well, I do want you to know today that Congressman Crowley and I met with FEMA representatives. They've arrived here from throughout the country, and guess where they're going to be staying? They're going to be staying at SUNY Maritime College right here in Throgs Neck, hundreds of volunteers, and the Congressman and I met people from Missouri and Texas and around the country that have come to New York in our hour of need. I'm counting on FEMA to make itself visible. In the next couple of days, they will be surveying Bronx neighborhoods, and the Congressman and I spoke to them concerning those neighborhoods. I'm in daily touch with the borough president concerning how he wants to be of help and how he has been of help. I had a conference call this afternoon with Speaker Christine Quinn and about 35 members of the council regarding the gasoline lines that we have, which we have to resolve, which I think are a potential for conflict among people. And I'm out on the streets. I'm hailing down Con Ed trucks when I see them. I hailed one down today that was passing a tree in the middle of the street, and I told the truck, I'm Councilman Vaca, and I want you to stop here. I'm hailing down those trucks day and night in my district, and I want them to know that the Bronx is not going to take second fiddle to anybody else.
Governor Cuomo, and we're going to have Assemblyman Hasty on the phone in just a few minutes, but Governor Cuomo made it clear today that future contracts, future deliberations, future considerations for Con Ed and other utilities, and also the MTA, will take into account their performance here. Do you have an evaluation yet on what their performance is? Are you frustrated? Or again, do you think this is just part of the infrastructure that we have and it's just going to take a little time and people have to be patient?
Well, let me tell you what I think. I think what the governor said the other day was even more meaningful, and I'm going to put it in context for everybody. What the governor said the other day is that we have postponed in New York too long things that we knew we had to do. We knew we had to modernize our subway system. We knew that we had to prune trees and prune the roots that were lifting up the sidewalks, and we knew that we had to fix the retaining walls along our waterfront. And you know what we did? We postponed doing it. We gave 8, 9, 10-year timetables to get it done. Well, this storm made us pay the piper, so to speak, because we had years delaying things that had to be done, and now we have serious consequences because the trees weren't maintained, because the retaining walls weren't maintained, and our infrastructure of our trains was left for years gone that still have not come.
Well, it will be interesting now in the future.
About the situation. I think we have to address priorities now and not leave everything for tomorrow.
Councilman, I'm going to let you go in just a moment, but we had a photograph that we showed earlier, and I want to show that again, of a tree that actually was in my neighborhood that fell over, and it was completely, once it fell, you could see that the base of it was completely hollow, and the tree, in essence, had been dead for a long time. That tree has caused an immense power outage, and I wonder if you and your colleagues will then, the next time the budget for tree maintenance comes up in the city council, will somebody remember and say, you know what, it sounds like it's a luxury, but you know what, this is how we protect New Yorkers.
We put more money in the budget this year at the city council, more than the mayor proposed, for tree pruning and tree maintenance. The problem is that for years in this city it was a low priority, and now we're playing catch up. And for years, money was taken from that budget and put into other parts of the Parks Department budget without the council's knowledge. So therefore, we are insisting, and we have been insisting, because the city of New York has a tree inventory. They planted 500,000 more trees as part of the Million Tree Program. What good are a million new trees when we can't maintain the tree inventory we have now on the streets of our city? We have to maintain those trees, the trunks, the sidewalks, and the pruning, and we cannot be planting any more new trees until we maintain what we have.
Councilman, we're going to bring on more of your colleagues. We thank you for your time. I'm happy that you have gotten electricity back, and I certainly hope that many of your neighbors and constituents get back to a point of normalcy as well. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is we go back to the Northeast Bronx, and it is Assemblyman Carl Hastie. Assemblyman, nice to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Gary, how are you?
Good. It's nice to talk to you because I know you really want to talk about your district when you come on the show, and I never let you. But tonight we want to talk about what you've seen through this storm and in the aftermath in the 83rd Assembly District. So go ahead. What did you see? What do you want to tell us about?
Well, you know, the night that it was happening, of course, you really don't get a good picture of everything that's happening. So what I did the next morning, me and my chief of staff, we drove around the district, and we wrote down every single issue that my constituents had, whether it was trees down, power outages, you know, and things like that. And we got that to Con Edison, to Verizon, to Cablevision, you know, trying to just alert people to, you know, what was going on in the Northeast Bronx. Now, you know, part of my frustration is, you know, we didn't get like, let's say, Breezy Point and other parts of even the Bronx were, but, you know, my constituents are starting to get frustrated because they've gone, you know, 3 and 4 days, you know, with no power, and it's getting pretty cold out at night. And, you know, so it's a tough situation, but...
Because I didn't hear what the Assemblyman said. How large a contingent of people in your district is without power at this point? Is it, you know, a large number and you're very disturbed, or is it simply a few people?
I'd say 25% of my assembly district doesn't have power.
How many is that?
I'd say about 25%.
25%, that is significant.
Yes. Listen, it's whole neighborhoods. You know, the Eden Wall and Wakefield sections have significant outages. The valley, almost the entire valley is without power. So it's really bad.
Mm-hmm. So you, as a state elected official, as opposed to your colleagues in city government who we just spoke to, have, I think, a different responsibility, because you're going to really have a say on, number one, how we deal with Con Ed, how we deal with the MTA. I'd like to ask a more general question. Do you think this will inspire a dialogue on how we deliver power? We're talking about ancient methodologies of, you know, power lines running through neighborhoods. One tree that, you know, takes down a whole neighborhood full of power. Do you think that dialogue is going to happen finally now in the state legislature?
Gary, I think this storm, you know, has kind of become a day of reckoning for New York. You know, I'm sure when many of us, you know, looked at what happened to Katrina, we thought that something like that could probably never happen, you know, in New York. But we have just seen how a Category 1 storm can do this kind of damage, you know, to the biggest city in the world. So I think this is a wake-up call for all of us on really trying to protect the city's infrastructure, moving forward from storms like this.
What about the communication between you and the federal, you and your colleagues in government and the federal officials? Councilman Cabrera expressed some concern that, he had places and he had supplies that he could deliver, but he needed the leadership and guidance from the federal government, and that didn't happen. Do you feel as frustrated, or do you think that there was some working together here?
I just think when you have a situation like this, we felt like this was going to be a bad storm, but I don't think anybody could have predicted the type of damage that we had. And I think that it takes some moments for people to want to have to get together to coordinate, how things are. And people have been coming to my office and calling my office asking, the same questions on, I want to help, what can I do? So I think there's an instant where people have to kind of take a pause to gather, all the information, because you want to make sure that resources get sent in the right place. So I really don't have a problem with what the city and the federal government and the response of the governor has. I'm just, really pressing, and imploring Con Edison to please get power back, to my constituents, and to hear that it may still take, days because there's still trees that are down. Because remember, I've had that instance because particularly in the very, residential areas, in the northern part of my district in the valley, where you had one tree fall and it ripped down entire power lines. So this is not just, hooking back up one power line that we're going to have in Northeast Bronx. I mean, you're going to have to replace, poles after you cut down the tree and to repair, these lines.
Assemblyman, I'm going to move on with some of your colleagues and, frankly, some of our viewers, but I will look very forward to the dialogue in the state legislature about how to overhaul some of these ancient systems and actually modernize the biggest city in the world, and I think the most important city in the world.
It's going to take a large capital investment that, some people are not going to want to talk about, but this is what we have to have.
We don't need to have this dialogue now, but, so what is your choice? You potentially destroy the entire city, or you make the capital improvements. Anyway,
my choice is always the capital investment, guys. But you take care.
You too. Thank you so much. Let's grab a couple of viewers who have called in. Our friend Larry Seiler, who hosts a show about one of the most wonderful TV shows on BronxNet television, called in earlier. Do we have Lawrence Seiler with us? Special People, Special Issues, Lawrence Seiler. Larry, you with us?
Hey, how you doing, Gary?
I'm fine, Larry. What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about how people with special needs were affected by Hurricane Sandy, since you're talking about that tonight.
Absolutely.
And I will be speaking about that next week on my show.
That's excellent. Were people with special needs taken care of, or at least got the kind of attention that they deserve during the storm?
Yes and no. Well, here's the thing, Gary. From what I understand, as a journalist, everybody was watching the news. But, yes, people with special needs were transferred from, I'll give you an example. They were transferred from NYU to other hospitals and also Bellevue. But from what I understand, according to the mayor's office, for people with special needs, there was no accessoride running. There were people with, from what I know some people that were stuck in their apartments who had special needs. The elevators weren't working. There were, some people had no food for days. So, yes, people were taken care of, and as far as being transferred to different facilities, but there could have been a better system.
Larry, let me interrupt you. We can't have you on too long because I have so many other guests. Your point is an excellent one, and it goes back to what many of the other guests said, and that is, we're not well prepared for these things. Seems to me, if we know these kinds of things might happen, you, as one of the prime advocates for people with special needs, will be right there to say, in the future, we've got to have this on the plate. We've got to have accessoride. Sounds to me like that's exactly what we need to do in the future.
Yes, sir. We need a better system in place.
Great. Larry Seiler, thank you for calling in. What time is SPSI on next week?
SPSI, well, we're taping next Friday, but and it's going to be a special. But SPSI airs Sundays, 12 noon, 9 p.m., Monday through Friday, 1 and 4, and Saturdays, 10:30 a.m., 12 noon, and 9 p.m., Channel 67, and Verizon Fios, Channel 33.
Larry, you're really one of the great heroes in the Bronx, and we really appreciate your consistent advocacy for people with special needs.
Thank you, Gary. I couldn't do it without you either.
All right. We'll bring on Bob from Riverdale. Bob called in tonight. What do you got, Bob? Do we have our friend Bob from Riverdale? Bob's starting to sound like a dial tone, isn't it? Maybe we'll get him later. I know that Councilmember Annabelle Palmer was going to join us, and I think she was with us on the phone. Councilmember Palmer,
Gary.
so nice to have you with us. Councilmember, I know your area is a very important one when it comes to the coastline because you have so much of that southern coastline. So tell me about what happened in your district through this storm.
You know, I have to be honest. When Monday around 10 a.m. we started going out to the Claxton Point, Harding Park area to speak to residents and make sure that they were obeying the exact orders as we were told that we were part of Zone A. Something that we weren't considered under Irene, but glad to that it was recognized that this time we needed to be part of that zone. And at that time, I mean, there were houses already underwater. It was just a sight to see. It was unbelievable. And that's when, I finally realized that, the warnings needed to be adhered to and that we really needed to get people out of that area and that this was going to be really bad for us. Going back yesterday, and again, walking through the area and visiting the homes that were destroyed by the storm was just devastating. It was an emotional tour that we took. I had some representatives from the mayor's office and the governor's office with us who worked back the information as we visited homes and we spoke to residents. And, it's people lost their homes. People lost all their belongings. People had just finished rebuilding their homes from Irene, and now lost everything again. And so,
let me ask you a couple of things. Number one, what do those people need right now to get them back to a point of normalcy? Because we can keep going around in circles, and God forbid we have another storm. Is there a way to protect the area? Is there a way to anticipate a little better? I guess we've already done reasonably well because at least they acknowledge that these people are in a position of danger. But what are you recommending, or is there anything to recommend for the people who are down there now? What do they need?
I think for these folks, I mean, some houses are just so close to the water. I don't know if some sort of levees can be built or something to protect, the water from coming in at the speed and the amount that it came in with, especially with the storm. And on a natural, rainy day, and we're talking about maybe inches of water, these houses back there are getting flooded. So I really need for DOT and DP to pay attention to this area. There's been cries for years, but, maybe for the last 80 years, way before my time, for this area to have, proper sewage and proper drainage that we still don't see back there.
That's a very...
It's time to take a hard look at what kind of drainage and proper sewage we need to provide folks out there with.
That's a very interesting point, and I don't know if you recall, many years ago, I think I was participating in a meeting in your office, and it was during a rainstorm,
yes.
And it had backed up literally into, the space in your office. A friend of mine...
The first time we met, and my office at that time was on 172nd Street and Rosedale. It was not even near the coastline. So you could imagine what the people in Harding Park and Claxton Point faced on Monday and the days that rain.
Carl Hastie was just on the show saying that in the state legislature this is ultimately going to turn out to be a real eye-opener I wonder if in the city council it's also going to turn out to be an eye-opener, because when you come now back into session and say, look, we have really got to look at drainage in the city of New York, certainly drainage in the South Bronx, and put resources and intelligence to it, that maybe now you'll be able to get people to listen to you.
Oh, absolutely. I think, it's unfortunate that it takes, situations like these for the discussions to finally, say, like we say, pen to paper. But, we cannot miss this opportunity to make things right moving forward and into the future. You mentioned we have 100-year-old system. We need to make sure that we're operating, in innovative ways to help people not face with situations like these again.
One other thing I just want to mention, a friend of mine who studies these kinds of things said one of the costs, which nobody knows about, of putting up all those big towers in Manhattan is you're basically stuffing the drainage with more and more water and sewage that has to go out, and yet you're filling an area with no other way to go. And when you get a storm like this, the subways will back up. It'll go over our shores, and then in neighborhoods like yours, there's no place to go. Seems to me that has to be part of the dialogue in the future of when we plan the city of New York.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I think, when we're looking at new projects and how we, building the city for that, right, the economic development of the city, we need to make sure that, we are looking into every detail of what that project and that, what that project is going to consist of, from drainage to the last light bulb that goes into the project.
Councilman Vaca was on there just talking about trees. I know that would be something you would support as well. Talk to me about the conditions right now. A lot of those people have been out of their homes. The homes are destroyed, and they're going to need financial support and other support. Give me kind of an assessment right now of what's going on in the 18th Councilmanic District.
About 10% of the community still remains, the waterfront community still remains without any power. Again, we're reporting it to candidates, and we're on these conference calls that are taking, maybe an hour, 2 hours to get through, to make sure that we're getting all the information to the right agency. People, I have one of the evacuation centers is in my district that people took advantage of that evacuation center. Right now, I believe one family remains from Harding Park at that evacuation center. Folks have gone either to their friends or families' homes. Again, but they're displaced, right? We're now into day 4 of what happened with the storm, and we still don't know when folks are going to get power back, and people are running out of food. There was supposed to be distribution. We were told today that Water's Place was going to have dry ice and wet ice at 12 p.m. People stood there for 1, 2, 3 hours waiting, and these trucks, and they were distributing the ice, and they changed the location on a daily basis. I think there has to be a plan to make sure if we're going to distribute ice from a certain location, the location remains the same and the times remain the same, so people know how to get there. Right now, my office has made a call to get any donations that we can, whether, blankets, non-perishable goods, personal hygiene items, diapers, formula, so to have those ready to be distributed to any family who may be running low on any of those items. We can get it to them. For the most part, I have to say that the people from Harding Park and Classen Point and District 18 have been, working together. They've been helping each other out. They're checking in on neighbors, especially, seniors. We're making sure that people are okay, and my office has been, available and accessible to anyone who needs to come in, even if it's, to sort of vent to me about the situation that's going on.
Right. Council member, we're gonna need to move on. One final question. I'm just curious. Your colleague Fernando Cabrera was concerned and said straight out that he thought that people who were most in need and least able to deal with these kinds of problems were the people who were last in receiving services. Do you share that concern and that sentiment?
I think that's been my biggest frustrations with this whole thing has been, there's been very little mention of how my district and Councilmember Vaca's district and certain areas of the Bronx have been affected, and we've been affected pretty bad. People have lost their homes. They cannot live in their homes. And I think, when we're talking about what happened, in keeping in mind that Greasy Point and Fat Lion have been hit the hardest, and there's still people missing, and we still can account for certain individuals that, the impact has been huge all around, and that we need to make sure that as a city we're pulling together, making sure that every borough counts.
I can only tell you that on Bronx Talk, we didn't forget you.
I know you did it, so that's why I'm so glad that you did this segment and that we were able at least communicate to the people of the Bronx that we're working hard and we're doing everything that we can, and I know that it's frustrating, but believe me, they have strong voices advocating on their behalf.
Great. Thank you so much, Council Member. We'll see you around, talk to you soon, and we appreciate you fighting for the people of the Bronx.
Thank you, Gary. See you soon.
I think we did have Bob on the phone, so let's start with Bob. He says he's from the Bronx News.
Gary,
he does write that
how
column. Hi, Bob. How are you?
Okay. When last we met, it was Tuesday, and we met by a down tree that brought down power lines by you.
That's right. And we've shown some of the pictures of that, as a matter of fact.
I'm enjoying some of our elected officials and what they have to say.
Okay. Do you have a question or a comment?
Well, first of all, Con Ed's goal is to have all of Manhattan back up first. I think, and I've spoken to a lot of other people in the Bronx who say that the Bronx has been spared compared to other areas like Staten Island.
Well, we certainly have done better. I don't think there's any doubt. But when you heard from Councilmember Palmer, you start to say, well, you know what, there still are some areas that really need attention.
She's right, and that's the coastal areas that are exactly opposite Long Island.
Yes. Bob, we know all this. Do you have something additional to add to the dialogue? That's what I want to know.
Well, right now you're seeing a lack of services and a lack of goods to the people.
Mm-hmm.
Gasoline is not there, and right now you're experiencing price gouging.
Were you gouged by anybody?
No, Gary. What it is I've been around. I've been up in Westchester. I've been most of the Bronx, and like I said, the Bronx is not as bad as what we see on TV elsewhere.
I appreciate that. All right, Bob, thank you very much for calling in and watching. We always appreciate you being with us.
Take care.
Now, Louis Sepulveda joins us right now. Mr. Sepulveda is a candidate for assembly, but he's been a community leader in the kind of central part of the Bronx and Community District, Community Board 9, and he's been an attorney and certainly well aware of what's going on. How are you, Mr. Sepulveda? What's going on?
Well, we're working real hard in the aftermath of this disaster, helping the community. We were out there before, during, and after trying to help the people that live primarily in the Castle Hill, Parkchester, Stratton Park, Van Nest area. We did a lot of things to help the community because a lot of people were not prepared or didn't heed warnings.
Tell me what you saw. I mean, what kinds of things?
Well, we saw downed trees. We saw people whose vehicles were stuck. We saw, what we concentrated was we set up a program, through my office we set up the Emergency Response Committee because we knew that a lot of our seniors, we have an aged population, were not going to be prepared for this storm. And so one of the things that we did, we went throughout the district, we gave our phone numbers so people can call us. And a lot of the seniors that have medication that have to be refrigerated, we asked them to get extra sets, for example, of insulin so that we can refrigerate them. In our offices, we had a generator so to make sure that people have the medication that they need. The New York NYU Medical Center gave a list of things that people should have, especially the seniors, packages that are water-resistant packages, information, doctor information, medication information, when we wanted to make sure that we got out there. During the hurricane, we were constantly monitoring people. We send well over 3,000 email messages. We send well over 400 text messages, constantly communicating with the community to make sure that they were prepared, if they needed anything, we were there to take water, food, anything that needed to be done.
Assess for me the biggest problems that you saw. Were there homes that were either destroyed or compromised in some form, or did much of the Bronx, you didn't have that kind of devastation?
No, we had, for example, on one of our biggest Catholic churches here in the district, there was a tree that came down that did considerable damage to the sidewalk in the area of the church. The biggest problem that we saw were the gas lines right now. Throughout the county, people were waiting. I mean, you have to have the police department monitoring the gas lines because they're creating some havoc. But luckily, we believe that's going to be alleviated somewhat because we communicated with Senator Schumer. The Port of New York was not open. He managed to get that open, and that will alleviate because supplies will now come in. He worked with the Coast Guard, and we're thankful for Senator Schumer for doing that, so that now you'll get more gas, more petroleum into the market, and that will alleviate what we believe is one of the biggest problems. Unfortunately, people had some idea that there's going to be down electrical lines and electrical power, but they weren't warned adequately about the potential for gas shortages. And so that's something that we have to look at in the event that there's
I just lost, I can't hear him here in the studio, so I don't know what happened here. Did we just lose contact with Mr. Sepulveda? I mean, it could be one of those Hurricane Sandy things. So should we, we'll take a break then? We'll take a very quick break. We'll get Mr. Sepulveda back because the whole gas line question is a very important question. We'll take that break. We'll come right back. We have other elected officials in the time we have, about 15 minutes left, and we'll do more Bronx Talk. We're talking about Hurricane Sandy reporting to the Bronx on how we did. Stay with us.
These things we count on every day started as ideas. Ideas from the minds of African Americans. Support minority education today so we don't miss out on the next big idea tomorrow. The United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Every year, mothers lose their babies to gun crimes. You'll always be your mother's baby. So before you commit a gun crime, think about who you'll leave behind. Gun crimes hit home.
Did you find the flashlight and the batteries?
Yes.
Did you make sure we're not missing anything in the first aid kit?
Yep.
Did you go through the plan with the kids again?
Yes. The more you prepare today, the more you'll be able to reduce the devastating effects of a tornado, an earthquake, a power outage, or any other disaster.
The magical thing about using energy wisely is that anyone can do it. Turn off lights. Use energy-saving light bulbs. And turn off computers and game systems when not in use. Make a change and we can really fly. Grab a grown-up and go online to energy.gov/kids.
2 outs with a runner on first base. Now the big guy comes up to bat, hitting .342 with 92 RBIs.
Enfría alimentos crudos y preparados lo antes posible. Este año, 1 de 6 personas en Estados Unidos se enfermará por comer alimentos contaminados. Visita foodsafety.gov/español.
Okay, we're back with you on Bronx Talk. We still do not have the telephones working, but I'll just recap some of the things if you're just joining us, some of the things that we talked about. We had Fernando Cabrera, who's a council member in the 14th, get the numbers confused, the 14th Councilmanic District. He expressed great concern that in the aftermath of Sandy, that some of the services that people need and deserve and are expecting from FEMA are not being delivered. He also expressed some concern that there was inequity in the way that services were being distributed, that people who are better to do were getting serviced, whereas people who are most in need and least able to deal with the tragedy were not getting service. Then we had Councilmember Vaca on, and he also expressed a different kind of concern, mostly that the infrastructure of the city was not being taken care of, and that things like a tree repair and other kinds of infrastructure repairs could be barriers or could be other kinds of preventative measures were not being taken seriously in the past when they were requested, and that maybe now he was certainly hoping that there's no point in building more trees without allocating more monies to fixing up and maintaining those trees. So that was Councilmember Vaca's concern. And then we had Carl Hasty, who came on, Assemblyman Hasty in the Northeast Bronx from the 83rd Assembly District. And he said what I thought was one of the most intelligent statements that we've heard tonight, and that is that he thinks this is an eye-opener. And when he goes back and his colleagues go back into the legislature and they start to talk about how do we deliver power in the city of New York, how do we take care of some of the other infrastructure, whether it be the MTA or some of the other vital things that can be provided by government, that even if there is a large infrastructure outlay necessary to correct those problems, he was thinking that, you know what, maybe now we have a chance to have those things heard, because in the past nobody would consider those kinds of expenditures. We also had Councilmember Annabelle Palmer, who was on, and she probably has the councilmanic district in the Bronx that has been hit hardest. She said over in Edgewood Park and Harding Park, a lot of the houses had been destroyed and overcome with water right from the beginning, and expressed a similar concern that Councilmember Cabrera had, that some of these things were not being provided and not being paid attention to. One of the things that she said, which I thought was very interesting, is that with Hurricane Irene, that district did not get included when they said Zone A has to be evacuated, whereas this time they did. So maybe those of us in the Bronx who are concerned about the people of the Bronx would say, you know what, that is a good thing, because at least they were considering her area. Also, we had Louis Sepulveda on the show. He is running for assembly, and he talked about services for senior citizens. And before he was cut off because the technology didn't work, and that would be another thing that I would want to investigate. But before he was cut off, he talked about the need for seniors to be prepared. And along with the very intelligent statement from Lawrence Seiler, who is an advocate for the disabled, Mr. Sepulveda said, you know what, and I was about to ask him, do we need to take better care and better preparations when we know these things are coming of our senior citizens? And Larry Seiler also said that the disabled people, some were taken care of, but when they had the problem at the NYU hospital, and those people were taken care of. On the other hand, they didn't have accessoride or some of the other accommodations that people who are with special needs would need in order to transport them or have them able to deal with this storm better. So anyway, that's where we're at. That's what we've discovered tonight. I'm sorry that we didn't get any more telephones in because, as I said, the technology here didn't work. So I think we're just going to wrap up the show then. And thank you for your time this evening. Folks, if you have questions or comments on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything that interests you in the Bronx, then you can email them to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. You can also comment on our Facebook page, so please become a fan of Bronx Talk on Facebook. Archives of Bronx Talk are available at bronxnet.org. You scroll down to Bronx Talk on the lower right-hand navigation bar. Now, we'll turn it around quickly. This was, of course, a special edition of Bronx Talk based on the hurricane. So we'll turn it around very quickly. This Monday night at 9 p.m., we rescheduled the Bronx Green Party for Monday night. The night before Election Day, they were canceled because of the hurricane. Anyway, we got it done. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to Michael, Max, and Marcelo, and certainly to Jane and Michael Arias and Dina and all the other people who worked on our show. They put a lot of this together at the last minute. And to all the Bronxites who are suffering through the aftermath of Sandy, whether it be with problems with flooding or electrical problems, we wish you good health. We wish you good luck. And we'll see you Monday night. Good night.
So here are the keys. Congratulations, it's officially yours. I'm sure you'll have many happy years here. Except for you, because you'll be gone 3 years from now, struck down by the same disease that got your father. So you won't be around for them. And sadly, it could have been detected early with a simple test, but you didn't have it. Okay, who wants to check out the backyard?
For a list of tests every man should have, go to ahrq.gov.
Sir, are you okay?
Everything's fine. Thanks.
You wouldn't ignore this, so why ignore the signs of a stroke? Call 911 immediately, because time lost is brain lost.
For you. Hey, Mom. You know, girls, I used to cheer back in my day. Ready? Okay!
That was amazing. Mom, that was amazing.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of siblings in foster care who'll take you just as you are.
I'm lucky. Let me help you with that. I get to do something I love. It has nothing to do with touchdowns or titles. Everybody bring it in. I get to play a part in the life of someone just starting out. How many of you think homework is just as important as teamwork? I help keep kids in school. Good. And that's the name of the game. My name is LaDainian Thomason. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United.
Mom, I'm not gonna go to college.
What are you saying? You've got to go to college.
Well, they offered me a job and...
Son, college is much more important.
No.
Yes.
No, Mom.
Yes.
Anyways, it's my decision.
Okay, well then decide what degree you're going to get because you will go to college.
Their tomorrow depends on your words today. The Hispanic Scholarship Fund has the information you need to help your kids go to college.
Did you find the flashlight and the batteries?
Yes.
Did you make sure we're not missing anything in the first aid kit?
Yep.
Did you go through the plan with the kids again?
Yes. The more you prepare today, the more you'll be able to reduce the devastating effects of a tornado, an earthquake, a power outage, or any other disaster.
The magical thing about using energy wisely is that anyone can do it. Turn off lights. Use energy-saving light bulbs. And turn off computers and game systems when not in use. Make a change and we can really fly. Grab a grown-up and go online to energy.gov/kids. We can all be energy savers. It's easy. Turn off lights. Use energy-saving light bulbs. And turn off electronics and appliances when not in use.